This episode of the only podcast about movies was recorded a little differently. Due to a super fun story Shahir will tell in the beginning of this episode, we had to record in separate spaces. So if you hear any echoes, pops, or other audio discrepancies, specifically on Shahir's side, please pay them no mind. And hopefully we'll be back to normal next week. Enjoy the show. What is up, Internet? No one thinks we have the balls to pull this off. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And dollars and broken promises, that's what this is all about. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Widows.
Hopefully neither of us will become a widow.
I mean, that's the goal?
Yeah, that's the goal.
Hashtag life goals?
It could happen.
Of course it could happen.
It is a very circuitous path to get to that point, but yes, it could happen.
I mean, why are we starting on such a dark note?
Because we're doing a dark movie, and that's what I like.
Okay.
And that's pretty much, and this is also a weird episode because though we are actually only maybe divided by 20 or so meters. We are in different rooms today, and that is because I have a contagious illness.
You son of a bitch.
Which I think is quite funny, to be honest with you.
Tell us about your illness.
So one of the things they don't teach you about in prenatal classes is hand, foot, and mouth disease, which is the Coxsackie virus.
Whoa, there's a lot of words you just said.
I know, and it's basically very common in daycares. It's it's under 5-year-olds are very susceptible to it.
Okay,
and it's basically just a series of spots that appear on your skin. The most painful of which can be inside your throat for the kid. Now, usually what happens is these is passed on. These can be passed on to the parents, but most parents don't exhibit symptoms, and most parents don't ever get the virus. But me being the childlike Peter Pan syndrome-ridden person that I am is the exception to the rule, and I am now covered in spots, as Matt can plainly see in the video.
Yeah. You're not looking like your best self.
No, and I can't shave either, and I've been in bed for the last 2 days, so it's been a bit of fun here. And the worst part is and this might be crossing the line of too much information, but you get them inside your throat, which makes it really hard to swallow. So I haven't been eating a lot as well. But what's interesting about this experience, if I'm going to bring it back to a movie-going experience, is what I've been thinking about is your best sick, I can do nothing else but watch a movie kind of movies.
Oh, I got mine.
Oh, yeah? What's that for you?
Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2.
Oh, so good. So good. Movies you can just turn on and you're sick and you can just, like you're curled up, you got what you need, and they're there to comfort you,
They should prescribe that shit. What about you? What have you been watching?
Well, I do this thing, which is that whenever I don't have this time to like not work and sit around and do nothing kind of thing.
Big time stuff.
Very often. So when it comes, I get into this mode where I'm like, oh, I've got all these movies I've got to like catch up with now that I've been meaning to see. And so rather than the comfort movies that I want, I kind of go into that mode. Although for comfort movies, I don't know why this is probably a pretty sad indictment on me, but David Fincher's Zodiac is one that I can always throw on and watch start to finish. Pretty easily.
What is wrong with you?
I also like Michael Mann's The Insider for that reason.
Okay.
And JFK. I could watch all three of those movies back to back.
Wow.
No issues. The movie I watched this time around is I had a copy of The Red Shoes, the Michael Pressburger film. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing about that is because I bought that on Criterion like a while back, and I didn't really, I was like, I'm just going to watch this one day, because it's a nice Criterion Collection version of that film. It's a movie that looks amazing in Technicolor.
Sure.
And I was watching it, and then I had to stop it because I got a phone call for some work and stuff, and I was doing some things. And usually it's a pretty good indicator of how I feel about a film is whether I'm willing to come back to it in those situations. And what I found with the Red Shoes, I was like, I did find it actually pretty comforting because it's very old-timey, like it's very English upper crustman sort of talking very highfalutin about ballet. And there was something sort of like theatrical about it that made me like, oh yeah, I like being in that world, and I wanted to go back to it. So I found the Red Shoes pretty oddly a kind of a comforting film. And then my son came home and we watched Ponyo together, the Hayao Miyazaki film.
Okay.
So sort of odd choices, but Zodiac might be the best indicator of what I can watch at any given moment.
Okay. Well, you know, I whatever makes you feel better. I want you to feel better. I don't like you being in quarantine. I don't like doing this show remotely from a block and a half away. But the last thing I do want to mention, I just think it's funny. You know, it's sorry, more humor at your illness's expense. But hand, foot, and mouth disease. Yeah. Is it a little bit ironic that you, a film critic, has foot and mouth disease?
Oh, it's not ironic at all. It is entirely appropriate that I have. It should be foot. Yeah, no, get my foot out of my ass. I don't know what it is.
I don't know.
Hand, foot, and ass disease.
Anyway, we're not talking anymore about Shahir's poor Shahir. Let's all be very nice to him today, myself included.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Cut to 10 minutes later when I'm screaming at you about an opinion. But yeah, so before we get into Widows, which we both undertook this week, do we have any contact with the outside world here in your quarantine yourself? Who has been discussing with the Only Movie Podcast at gmail.com or Only Movie Pod on Twitter community?
I have been going furious on Twitter because I am home. I am alone. I have got nothing to do, so I am Donald Trumping my Twitter Twitter up right now. I'm raging.
So you're constantly denying climate change and saying that shooting tear gas at children is good?
Oh, God. Can't even joke about these things anymore.
I know.
But anyway, there's two fun things that happened on Twitter this week with our Twitter account.
Yes.
One is that Guillermo del Toro started tweeting about unproduced scripts that he had written that hasn't been out and that have never come out. And he sort of talked about how each of these were like a year and a half's worth of work, and there was something like 10 of them. So he was talking about how all these films he really works hard on never see the light of day. And I asked him a question, and he replied to me about The Hobbit. So I asked him about, how much of his unproduced script in The Hobbit was there. And he said, no, that is a produced script. He's co-wrote that. And I was kind of curious about how much the final versions reflected what he wanted to do, because if you remember, the thing with The Hobbit is Guillermo del Toro came to New Zealand to work on that. Eventually, I think he and Peter Jackson maybe clashed a little bit, and he left the project. So this is one of those sort of what if scenarios, like what if Guillermo del Toro had directed The Hobbit as one movie instead of three. The second thing was that I thought was really funny was that a lot of people were talking about Widows this week, and there was another critic on Twitter that was talking about what their favorite scene from Widows was, and I replied with what my favorite scene was, and I kind of just underscored it with also any scene with Cynthia Erivo in it. And then Cynthia Erivo liked my tweet. And I didn't even tag her in it, which means she must have been looking for anyone mentioning of her. But I thought that was nice, and I was like, I should follow up with like how good I thought I watched it, but I didn't want to push it too far.
Right.
But a couple of other tweets we got this week this you'll like this.
Okay.
A tweet from Franker Z who enjoys the podcast. Thank you for that, Franker. But wanted to point out about my pronunciation of and I'm going to pronounce this the way I was pronouncing it, Denis Villeneuve.
Oh, yeah.
And Franker Z decided to send me a video of someone teaching people how to pronounce Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve. No, hang on.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve. Yeah, I'm just going to cough during
just
every
say
time I
it
pronounce.
real quick. That's what I do.
So I think I got the Denis right, but I was kind of overemphasizing the Villeneuve.
Maybe you have to be like, Danny.
Denny.
Oh, hi, Danny.
Oh, hi, Danny. Oh, hi.
Oh, hi, Danny Villeneuve.
I will say that in my defense that it's because Neuve is the way that you would pronounce Neuve in New Zealand. So Nouvelle-Zélande in French. But I was overemphasizing the Neuve, and it's Neuve.
Okay.
So thank you, Frankie Z. I appreciate the pointing. No, I actually do, because I love the French language, and I hate to ruin it. And we also got an email from friend of the show, Steven, who says he really enjoyed our experiencing places through film episode. His wife and he took one of the worst Christmas holidays after 6 months of freelancing for the BBC in London, and he had to scrap his last-minute travel plans and ended up going to the island, Port Merion, Wales.
Okay.
But no, not the island. He went to Port Merion, Wales, where they filmed The Prisoner, the old TV show, which I haven't watched a lot of. And he said it was just such an incredible experience because the show reminded, like the show took such advantage of the location that when he went to the location, all he could think about was being in the show. And it was such a great experience of like combining his love of the show and this sort of amazing experience of being there. So thank you, Stephen, for that. I kind of followed it up with a couple of places that I really love, which I think I mentioned in that episode as well. Vietnam being one of the top of them because of a film called The Vertical Rays of the Sun. So, again, if you have any other feedback or comments, please email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter where you can find me rage tweeting about all things cinema.
Or just rage tweeting about general illnesses that you might be.
Oh, my God. I haven't tweeted about hand, foot, and mouth disease yet. I should tweet about it. And see
you should. You should hashtag that. See what other Z-list internet celebrities, much like ourselves, are afflicted with said disease at some point.
I think you're overestimating us by using the word celebrity.
I said Z-list.
Even I think we're lower than Z-list.
No. Anyone who puts content on the internet is a Z-list internet celebrity.
Oh, I disagree with that, but I don't think this is the time nor the place to debate. I think we are just part of the population.
Z-list internet
No.
celebrity.
I just think we're part of the population.
Okay. Listen, content is king. We're making that sweet content, Shahir, at the lowest rung.
All right, but moving on to Steve McQueen's Widow, an adaptation of a Lydia LaPlante miniseries that was eventually turned into a novel.
When did that come out?
1983.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. So
let's talk about 1983. Okay.
Yeah, the year was 1983. No, so this movie, and I think you brought this up before in our Wreck-It Ralph episode, we were talking about directors talking about their thing before the movie.
Right.
Did Steve McQueen come on your screen first and
yes,
say thank you for coming and whatever? So again, that was I liked that one better.
I did not like it.
I mean, I didn't like it either, but I'm saying I liked it better than the Wreck-It Ralph one.
Yes, of course,
but there was something that was very interesting that he said. He said, I've been wanting to make this film since I was a child or I was young or I was some. He said something where I was like, oh, okay, I thought this was going to be a dark, like weird, like not like just a sort of like dark, violent film. And it was a dark, violent film. And I was like, this is the movie? This is the one?
So wait, what do you?
It's just strange. Like, I wish I remembered his exact words.
No, I remember him saying that when he was growing up, he wanted to make this movie.
When he was growing up, he wanted to make this movie, and I guess that could mean like teenager or whatever. But I guess when people mention that, I instantly go to like childhood.
Okay.
It's my perception of it. There's nothing wrong with what he said. But
he was 14 years. He would have been 14 years old. I just did the math.
Okay.
When he would have seen Widows on TV.
Right.
So
maybe,
but this is interesting as well. This is because I think I wanted to make I know I wanted to make Batman: The Dark Knight Returns when I was like 10 years old.
I mean, okay, yeah. You might be pulling me around on this. I wanted to make a bunch of weird edgelordy nonsense when I was young.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally. Okay, I take it back. I still it just at the moment. It threw me because in my brain I was like, when you're young, and I was thinking like when I was young, I was making like stupid like tape recorded radio shows when I was like 9 or 8 or 7. Like this might be the core of like my neurosis as a filmmaker. But I think when I was young, I did want to make pretty dark, gritty stuff, and I think it came from this idea of wanting to be taken seriously. Oh yeah, 100%. Later on, high school, you try to be dark and gritty, and then you realize you can't be. Because you're literally not a full person yet.
Yeah, well, I think you can be. There are examples of filmmakers who made their amazing work young, but yeah, no, I think it came from like that sort of sense of wanting to be taken seriously.
Of course,
as an artiste,
because you're an artist and you're tortured and you're dark and you need
and you need to show the world how tortured and dark the world really is.
Yeah, because they don't know. Only you know.
Yeah, you've got access to that sort of minefield of terror in your brain.
Yeah, it's called puberty.
The other film that we mentioned, Widows, in, the reason I was excited for Widows, and again, I did the thing which I don't watch any trailers, didn't watch, as soon as I knew Steve McQueen making Widows, I was making a heist movie, I was like, All in.
Yeah.
Don't need any more information. Take my money. But we talked about it in our Ocean's 8 review because we talked about. I guess we were having that conversation about female reboots of male properties.
Yes.
And I think my point with Ocean's 8 was that I didn't think it. I'll stand by this. I don't think Ocean's 8 is a very good movie, and I would rather that there were new properties for female ensembles to take on that didn't have any reminiscence of it wasn't like, let's do a female version of Oceans, let's just make our own thing. And that's what I was kind of hoping for, and that's what got me excited about Widows. Now, had you heard much about Widows going into it other than me talking about it?
No, I'd seen the trailer and I really liked it. I do think I don't know, this will strain me a little bit, but I don't know. In my head, Ocean's 8 and Widows are in such disparate categories of film.
Entirely.
I wouldn't even like. Now I can't and I won't because it'd be stupid. Sort of like. Everyone is welcome to like one better than the other. In fact, I haven't even tried to put them up against each other. Yeah. But I wouldn't even sort of breathe them in the same sentence. One is delivering a specific experience, and the other one is delivering a very different experience. The only tie is sort of the focus on an all-female, well, not even all-female cast, because obviously there's men in this film as well, and there's one or two men in Ocean's 8 as well too. So it's just like I wouldn't even have thought to put them together.
Is that Ocean's 8 in my mind is trying to do what Widows does without even trying to do it. Widows delivers an all-female heist film. If that's your baseline, Widows does that without making an issue or deal out of it or making it the selling point of the movie. Ocean's 8 seemed to make that the selling point of the movie. Like, hey, we're doing an Ocean's film, but it's an all-female cast. Just like Ghostbusters. Hey, we're doing Ghostbusters, but instead of all men, it's all women.
I don't think it did, though. I think you're confusing what the film is trying to do with what the marketing is trying to do.
Well, I think inherently by taking the Oceans franchise and slapping it onto it and then reconfiguring the cast, that's what it's doing, right? I think they wanted to do something different with it, and that is sort of the chosen angle they decided to go with, but I don't think that the movie itself is about that. There's moments that it comes into play in the plot, sure. Right. I guess my criticism there is I don't think the movie's about much, and I don't think the movie
Ocean's 8 is about having a good time. I mean, all the Oceans films are about having a good time. There's very little emotional resonance in an Oceans movie.
I would argue that the first three movies, and I made this argument in that podcast, that the first three movies have a much clearer through line about what they're about, whereas Ocean's 8 is just simply, in my mind, kind of a fairly misguided, uneven marketing exercise. I don't think that movie holds a lot of value for me.
I disagree. I think the value it holds is just having fun and doing a enjoyable heist movie. It doesn't have to say a grand scheme thing. Because again, I think the Ocean's movies definitely have, on occasion, one or two things to say. But to be honest, I've seen each of them multiple times, and I can't remember if there was like whatever specific arc of redemption or whatever was going on.
I think you're confusing having something to say with having a clear through line. Like, I don't think having something to say means that it has to be meaningful. I just mean it has to be a clear through line. I think that's my issue with and I think that is true with Ocean's 8, which is about Danny trying to get Tess back. I think that's clear with Ocean's 12 when they're trying to reform the team and they're having fun with the idea of like escalating heists that don't need to escalate. And I think that's true with Ocean's 13 when it's about trying to save one of their older friends who is now in trouble that they've helped all the way through. I don't think that's true with Ocean's 8. And I think if you recall from that episode, we all got to the end of that film and said, I don't really know what Sandra Bullock's character really wanted in this film.
True, but at the same time, I think you're forgetting that a through line for a movie can just be that it is a good time to experience the movie.
I think that if you
live enough on
okay, so to be clear, I think that to me is a poor definition of what a through line is.
What are you talking about? Just what I mean? Okay, then let's put it this way.
Like for example, Wayne's World, I think has a clear through line about what that film wants to be and is a good time. I think just having a good time.
So the through line of Wayne's World, now we're going in the weeds, but I'm interested now. The through line of Wayne's World is Wayne coming to terms with what? Sort of growing up and trying to move his career in a certain way while not losing who he is?
It's been a while since I've seen Wayne's World, but it's about, in my mind, it's about two best friends recognizing that their friendship is more important than their work.
Maybe half of the second act is about that, but I think it's...
But again, I don't think that needs to be meaningful. I just think it just needs to be clear that that's what the film is about.
Okay, and I guess Ocean's 8, and again, I'm defending Ocean's 8 too much. I just think it just doesn't even belong in the same sort of like, I don't think it's a fair comparison to compare Widows to Ocean's 8 just because, hey, there's girls in it. The Ocean's 8's through line, honestly, I think is a matter of seeing how far Sandra Bullock's character, the sister of Danny Ocean, can take a thing, get back at somebody. I don't know. I guess, you know what, here's the thing. You are correct in the sense that I can't place a clear, like, here's what this movie is about. But I will say, every time I think about Ocean's 8, I was like, I liked watching that.
Okay,
and
that's totally fine.
I can't say that about every Ocean's film, to be honest. I think the first two were great. Or is it the first and the third? There's one of them where I was like, why is this here?
Yeah, the third one is not, and I don't want to make the case that, and I think I said this in that episode as well, is I don't want to hold up the Ocean's films as like the pariah of heist movies. You know, I just think that they're very clear and concise about what they want to do, and they do them very well.
Okay, fair.
I think the third Ocean's movie is pretty bad.
Okay,
but the first two are great. I think the reason I'm mentioning that is I agree with your point though as well, which is that I don't think Widows is in the same category as Oceans.
Right.
The reason I kind of brought up that comparison is that I think our response to Ocean's 8 was very much like, it's very cool to see an all-female heist movie. And I think we all talked about how it was cool to see older women, like stars kind of being badass on screen. And I think for me, the thing here is that Widows does that without ever making that an issue. Widows kind of does that without making that the central focus of what the film is, and I think that's the only thing that we all kind of latched onto with Ocean's 8 was that.
Again, so I do have to lean on the fact that it is a lot of the marketing, though. It's the marketing of the films themselves, and
slapping slapping the Ocean's title on it, and then reconfiguring the cast. It kind of that's what it does. But the other reason, I'm completely excited about this is Steve McQueen is a filmmaker that I again gets my money, gets my dollars, regardless of whatever it is he's doing. To the point where I've gone back and watched. Steve McQueen is a filmmaker who started as a video installation artist, and I've always had a weird kind of I guess shouldered cringe or twinge or something like that whenever I hear about anyone doing video installation art. There's very few video installation artists that I admire. There's a couple who've done some really interesting work, but usually on a very large scale. And most of the time I kind of watch video installation artists with a little bit of a sort of nervous twitch in the back of my Now, this is overemphasized, and this is not the case with Steve McQueen.
Sure, but I'm just talking about the vocation in general.
Video installation takes a lot of times in the video installation work that I've seen in museums is that it's often the case that the artist wants us to focus our attention on something, but they do it with, normal video or home video or something like that, and they put it into the sort of museum gallery context. And it requires us to do a lot of association work to kind of understand the context of what the video is in the context of the space we're in.
Okay.
And oftentimes I think that, again, this is very specific to my experiences, and I don't want to, besmirch the video installation artist kind of world. But I often find that the work that the audience has to do is unrewarding given how often under-technically proficient the work is that produced is by the video installation artist. A lot of times I've seen home video VHS put into a gallery space, and it's that sort of context work that we have to do. Sometimes it's very good.
Sure.
Sometimes it's not.
I just want to say, there's if you look at, just compare video installation artists to film directors, okay? Yeah. Now, there's probably Well, you know what? I don't even know. I don't know what the like 3-to-1 ratio or like whatever the number difference is between each of them. But you could find a million terrible ones, but obviously there's like 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 like really excellent ones. So I don't know if
no. And the one guy who is a genius, who I've seen his work and it's amazing, is a guy by the name of Bill Viola.
Right.
And he makes these giant installation pieces where the fact that it's a video is kind of part of the experience.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about, like, I've been to small galleries where a video installation artist has basically just put up like skate videos in a thing, and that's been my impression of it, and I've kind of always cringed.
And I've watched a bunch of films from directors and been like, you don't know what the hell you're doing, and I've cringed there, but I don't like hate directors.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Video installation is kind of slightly off the topic of what it's very different to what it is we do, though.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's why I brought in the ratio thing. It's like, yeah, there's always going to be more bad ones than good ones.
Fair, it's totally fair. And again, it's just a personal reaction.
Okay, sorry, I keep derailing. I talked about Wayne's World, and now I'm all over the place.
So, but Steve McQueen is a video installation artist who'd made the shift into feature film directing with a film called Hunger, which is based on the Bobby Sands Hunger. What do they Hunger Pact? What do they call that when a hunger strike? Bobby Sands' hunger strike. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. And that was a remarkable sort of marriage of Michael Fass. You know, it was kind of like it brought Michael Fassbender into the public limelight. And it was this remarkably cinematic but still oddly experimental film. Have you seen Hunger?
I have not. No.
It's pretty extraordinary in that McQueen he makes a film that looks, like a movie. Again, from a guy who makes video installation art to kind of transverse into the world of narrative filmmaking, as opposed to documentary or experimental film is kind of, you're sort of like, oh, what is he going to bring to the table? And he makes a film that kind of sheds all the weight of, where he comes from and just makes sort of a standard film. But he makes odd choices in the film that heighten the experience, that give you something that is very unique. So the examples of this are, there is a single take scene which you can find, and I think it's 17 minutes, where Michael Fassbender is talking to his priest. And it's just a single scene of dialogue, but they never cut away, they never move the camera, and it just stays focused on this one piece of dialogue. And the two actors aren't even facing the camera. They're sort of facing away from the camera slightly. And it's just this extraordinary it gets into this zone of like performance art where you're seeing these actors kind of like continuing the scene in this way that kind of continually elevates it just by staying on this one shot. And then he does other things like that. Like I've only seen the movie once or twice, and there's a scene where a prison guard is like scrubbing the floors, and I think it lasts like 5 to 10 minutes or something like that. And literally all that's happening is this prison guard is scrubbing the floors and slowly getting closer and closer and closer to the camera. And it's weird because you watch it and go, this is sort of indulgent, but you kind of, the storytelling kind of escalates, and the cumulative effect of all of this kind of creates a bigger whole. It creates a bigger sum of its parts, and it was quite a striking debut film. He of course followed this up with Shame, another follow up with Michael Fassbender, which I quite enjoyed, despite sort of being like it was a movie about sex addicts, a sex addict in Manhattan. Have you seen Shame?
Yes.
Which I quite enjoyed for how serious it was, despite like having one of the world's most handsome men being a sex addict in Manhattan. I was like, oh yeah, that's really tough, dude.
It'd be easy to fall into that life if you're Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, exactly. But I appreciated how serious the film kind of took that subject without ever joking about it,
right?
And made it something kind of special. And then, of course, there's 12 Years a Slave, which won him the Oscar, which won Best Picture, which I think has sadly become one of those forgotten Oscar movies. And it's an entirely well-deserved Oscar movie as well. I really, really love that film. I think it's quite an extraordinary film.
Same.
I think the sum total of what we've got with Steve McQueen there is this sort of sense that he is someone who is good at making films I was trying to categorize this last night about existential suffering. You know, he
I can see that.
Yeah, he makes films about people who suffer because of their beliefs and how strongly they cling to those beliefs.
Right.
You know, that's certainly the case with Bobby Sands. Most notably, it's sort of the most ironic case with 12 Years a Slave,
Yep.
and probably the most funniest example of that would be Shame. You know, he is suffering because he has this addiction that is holding him back. So
Right.
I think Steve McQueen kind of has this sort of amazing ability to sort of take existential suffering and make it palatable on screen. And then he wanted to do, you know, again, we sort of asked that question. It was like, how do you follow up, you know, a sort of Oscar-nominated, important prestige picture, which is to do a heist movie.
Yeah.
An all-female heist movie. Matt, can you tell us what Widows is about?
I sure can, but I'm going to rip it off from IMDb. Set in contemporary Chicago, amid a time of turmoil, 4 women with nothing in common except a debt left behind by their dead husband's criminal activities take fate into their own hands and conspire to forge a future on their own terms. That's beyond a normal IMDb synopsis. That's like back of the box.
Yeah, I would say so. And I guess maybe because it's a property that's already existed. So I feel like I've been talking for a while. Matt, what did you think of Widows?
I dug it. I also didn't quite know what to expect going in. I most certainly didn't think it was going to be as and maybe I should have, because I had forgotten that it was a Steve McQueen vehicle, and then when I saw him there, I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, it's going to be like kind of, you said, sort of existential suffering, and then he's like, oh, I want to do it since I was a kid, and I was like, huh? And then so I was kind of on that weird like teeter point in the beginning of the film because I wasn't quite sure the tone it was going to take. Overall, I thought it was highly effective, and highly effective in ways that normally a heist movie is not, in the sense of, how do I put it? It moves your attention or what you find important to very specific parts. And it's interesting because while actually Jamie and I, when we saw this, we couldn't actually remember any characters' names.
Okay.
But it did not take away from the enjoyment of the film. Normally, if I can't remember a character's name, that's a dead giveaway for me to sort of have more issues with the film than not. And this was a case where I think that they only said characters' names like maybe once or twice, with the exception of Elizabeth Debicki, who was named Jennifer, or that was like the code name for her or something.
Wasn't her name Alice in the film?
Maybe, but they call her Jennifer twice during the part near the end, which we can get into when we get into spoilers.
Okay.
Regardless, I was shocked at how much I cared about the situation without being tied to any one specific person, with maybe the exception of Viola Davis. Viola Davis's character, who I am now told is named Veronica. But I don't remember that ever happening. I do remember Liam Neeson's character was named Harry because everyone references Harry, and it's all about what Harry did and Harry's crew and blah, 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 blah. But I thought that this was a film that took the framework of a heist movie. And the heisting is enjoyable, but it's definitely not a focal point, in my opinion. The focal point is how these disparate characters, who are loosely tied to a life of crime by their husband's involvement in being in the same crew, now handle. Some of them have to be involved, and some of them just sort of choose to be involved in a weird way, based on either financial issues or where they are in their lives or how alone they're feeling. You know, like there's lots of different reasons why these people all come together to do this. I know you had initially said that any film with why am I blanking on her name? Bad Times
Cynthia
Rubio is fantastic. I didn't realize that was the same actress from from
Bad Time.
Yeah, and I was like, that was like, yes. I was like, I love it when I don't recognize actors across films, and that just makes me love their performances in both even more. I'm looking forward to anything she does. I guess sort of to wrap up my first thoughts is just I was so impressed with the emotional resonance of a story that I didn't particularly care about any one particular character more than another. And that's very unlike me. I normally need to be tethered to specific characters. And obviously, I'm rooting for the women who are doing the heist in this film.
Yeah.
But like...
you weren't going for Robert Duvall's racist dad?
No. Though there's some interesting stuff, even with what's his name, with Colin Farrell, his character Jack Mulligan, and Robert Duvall's Tom Mulligan, which we can get into soon. I just it was a different kind of enjoyment for me that I hadn't experienced in a while. Mix that with it is a far more emotional roller coaster, again, for like a group of people as opposed to a single individual that I'm used to seeing in a heist movie, and I thought it was refreshing.
Okay.
Yourself?
Yes, I absolutely love this film. And the thing is that's been interesting is that I've had a week to kind of digest this because I saw this sort of a couple of weeks ago. Sorry. Yep. And the thing that look, one of the great heist movies of our generation is Michael Mann's Heat. And the thing about Michael Mann's Heat that is incredible is that every character in that film feels like they could have their own movie.
Yes.
And so the thing, my enjoyment of this film stems from kind of maybe the extension of what you're saying, which is that I was not necessarily tethered to one character as well. But what I loved about this movie was the notion that I felt that you could turn the camera on any character and I felt they could have their own entire movie. And I would be absolutely fascinated in that. And the fact that they all come together doesn't diminish their role in this film. It just kind of heightens the overall soup. It's that sort of, for a food analogy, it's that every ingredient here is giving their fullest potential, and I'm enjoying the way in which they're coming together in this film.
Right.
So I love that every single character in this film seemed to have a life and existence of their own that was truly unique. You know, like I loved who is his driver.
I love that guy.
Yeah,
he's like a chameleon too. He's all over the place, and I never he's always in things, and I'm always shocked. Garrett Dillahunt.
Yeah, he's in the New Girl, I believe, or in Mindy Kaling's show.
Okay,
Mindy, and then he's also in Looper. Those are the two things that I kind of.
I've seen him in. I believe he was a Terminator in the Sarah Connor Chronicles. He was one of the ones that came back a couple times, which was super fun in that.
I like, the fact that he turns up and he's got this, there's a sort of story about this football ring that he wears, and we also get the impression that he has some kind of mental disability. We're not exactly sure what it is, but he speaks a little. He even says at some point, "I'm a little slow."
Yeah.
But he, it's not really mentioned, and he has this kind of whole kind of loyalty to the thing. I loved all of that. And I felt that was true for all the characters. They all had a really interesting backstory.
Yeah. There's something about world building that this movie does incredibly, incredibly well. And it's funny, I just put the thing together with what you just said. On Extra Credits, we're working on a new season of Extra Sci-Fi about Tolkien and Herbert, basically Lord of the Rings and Dune, and how that's affected all of genre fiction since they were written. And I think that we talk a lot about world building and how you make world building, how you make things in your world feel important, and you make them grounded in whatever world you're in. Therefore, it can't just be Bash wears a Super Bowl ring, and then that's how Veronica knows that something may have happened to him, right? It can't just be that. We need to know backstory about Bash. He's a little slow. We don't quite know why. When something happens to him and he tells the story about the ring, that first, there's a miscommunication. People think he's an actual football player, but it's all small things that make entire sense in the world that this film is putting together for every character. That makes and I think that's what helps sort of to your point, any one of these characters could hold their own film, because we are given enough of their world to basically, in our own heads, build the rest of the character around what we're given, even though it's a 2 hour and 7 minute movie and it's an ensemble piece.
Yeah, and I think that's a kind of incredible thing, and I think we should give credit to Gillian Flynn there, the screenwriter who wrote Gone Girl and Sharp Objects as well, and novelist as well. I think she had this amazing ability, and it's something true again of Gone Girl and Sharp Objects, two shows that a show and a movie that I really like, that she has the ability to kind of make characters feel important. No character in this film feels throwaway.
Yeah.
Like even the point, like Jackie Weaver, and an Oscar-nominated actress. I love her from Animal Kingdom, and she kind of almost plays a similar style role in this film. She pops up for one scene, and I feel like I have an entire backstory for who that character is, and it informs what we know about Alice throughout the rest of the movie. You know? So I think that's what is extraordinary about this film. I for 90% of this was kind of thinking, oh my God, we have got the next generation of the film Heat. We've got a film that is on par with Heat in terms of its execution, its seriousness, its commitment to storytelling, its commitment to character.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things later on which get into sort of third act reveals about this film, which didn't play as strongly for me, and I want to explain why when we get into those reveals.
Okie doke.
But on the whole, I just think this is, like everything. Somehow, again, Steve McQueen has kind of, for someone who came into filmmaking kind of a little bit later in life after having sort of a previous career, he kind of gives a masterclass in what filmmaking should be in almost every film he does. That is quite extraordinary. So this was to me a more exciting heist film than Baby Driver, despite Baby Driver really wanting to hit that note. This was a more compelling ensemble vehicle than Ocean's 8. Then despite that film wanting to do that, and I don't mean to like sort of besmirch other films in order to raise this one up. I'm just saying in that this film, without it seemingly doesn't try to do any of those things. It just wants to do what it does, but somehow comes up being the best at everything.
I mean, here's the deal. I think both the movie Baby Driver, I would honestly not even need to call it heist movie. It's like a driving action flick, because by the end it's literally like cars dancing and exploding. And the Ocean's 8 we kind of already touched. I will say I don't think this film entirely does it effortlessly. The thing that I felt was a little, and again, this is by no means this is if there's nits to pick. The underlying story, which I found very interesting, between the political candidates of the ward that they were, the precinct, or not. What's the grouping of constituent?
I think they're running for local congressional.
So whatever
elections.
Grouping of those, the two people, Colin Farrell's Jack Mulligan, and I'm trying to remember the actor's name.
Jamal
Manning is the character, Brian Tyree Henry.
From Atlanta.
Yeah. They're sort of vying for, there's a sort of understory about this political thing going on, as it's happening. And while I think the undercurrent of that is an incredibly interesting framework to put different aspects here, every time there was a specific, talking point about policy, or good or bad, whatever it was, the points felt very script writing 101, and that's what a liberal would say, and that's what a right-wing person would say. And it was all that those particular moments when it wasn't about the heist, it was just sort of setting up the backstory and the world building in this film. Those moments were the only times it knocked me ever so slightly out, where I was like, well, that's a canned thing. But I will say I'd much rather have that sort of around to be the backstory, because it's at least pertinent for our day and age, than anything else. So I do think, for instance, getting back to your point of it sort of being effortless, I think a lot of it does seem effortless, but there's some parts of this, very slightly, 2% of it, where I'm like, I see you trying there.
Right.
But yeah.
And I think we should jump into spoilers here, because the things that I want to talk about that I think didn't land for me are probably elements that you're talking about, where where things kind of fall off the wagon. So I don't think this is, a perfect movie, but it comes so close, and it comes so close to like one of my examples of what I think a perfect heist movie is. That it's I think that's an award unto itself.
Okay.
Because the bar is so high and this reaches so far.
So we're now going into spoiler town. We're driving the car with one shot from no spoilers for about 7 minutes, and then we're driving up to the spoiler mansion.
And that is the moment where I kind of like moved into cinematic bliss with this movie.
Oh, real good.
That was such an exhilarating example of smart, effortless filmmaking. Like it was just such a wonderful example of like how to tell a story in the simplest, how to tell a story in the most essential way.
How to tell two stories without you realizing it until the end.
The amazing thing is that sequence is telling us so much. It's telling us the story of corruption that Colin Farrell's character has. Like he lives in this ward that is so close to his own home, but lives in an entirely different universe.
Yep.
That he has built this. The thing that got me excited about that was the layers of what that shot is. So in the middle of the film, we go to a rally that Colin Farrell is holding, to kind of seal his place for the 9th ward or 14th ward or whatever it is. And he's talking about a program he's instigated where he gives out small business loans to people in the local community so that they can build up their business.
Yeah.
And the thing that's amazing that starts about it is most of the time, a film like this, a scene like this might be filled with extras that are like really excited about the thing that he's talking about. But in this sequence, nobody is excited about the thing he's talking about. In fact, there's a journalist there who's trying to get a different story, and he's the only excitable person. And everyone else feels like they kind of just have to be there.
Right.
And so then the camera, then Colin Farrell gets into the car, and the camera stays fixed in one position in the front of his car. And we hear this, and so we're seeing the kind of the extreme poverty that they're living in. And then we hear this conversation that starts off in the strangest note with Colin Farrell asking his assistant, "Have you ever slept with a black man?" And we realize that Colin Farrell has this like weird obsession with like the distinction between black and white. We hadn't quite seen it before, we weren't quite sure where he stood on that issue. And then he kind of continues on about how this is all bullshit, how he hates doing this job, how, he hates having to run for this election. And we realize that the whole thing that he's been doing out there in this rally has just been bullshit. Then the camera pivots to the right ever so slightly so that you see that the driver is an African-American man. And he's having this conversation, this full-throated conversation about race, about politics, about the bullshits of Chicago, all in front of his driver, who is African American. So he's kind of like has this inability to kind of see the power of his words in front of other people. And then again, this has all been a single take, and they eventually get out and they walk up to the mansion, which we realize is only a 7-minute, which is an opulent sort of beautiful mansion, and is only like a 7-minute drive from dire poverty. And that whole sequence kind of just outlays so much information with one single take. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
And you even left out the part with his assistant basically showing dominance over him. So his assistant is this sort of, up to this point, this mousy redheaded woman. And then when they're in the car, it turns when he's just complaining. He asks her if she's ever slept with a black man. Molly Kuntz is the actress, and she's like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? And she sort of snaps on him while this is all going on. It's like, this is our life. You need to man the fuck up, put your goddamn big boy pants on, and get this shit done, because this is what we do. And then, like, you never see that character again sort of in that light, but you then realize how sort of small of a man Jack Mulligan sort of is. And then later on, even when there's a conversation with Tom Mulligan, his father, you sort of see even more, which does kind of twist that narrative even further when we get to it. But back to that shot, it was great. I didn't realize, like, that's a shot of consistent discovery. You have the narrative going on in the dialogue. You have the reveal that the driver is an African-American man. You have the reveal that it's still the same shot. And then when he pulls up to the... I feel like I got onto the it's just a hop, skip, and a jump away from poverty to this mansion. I got on that train probably like 1 or 2 seconds late because I only got it right when they got out of the car, and I was like, wait, that was one shot. That was one shot. They just drove the whole time. That's so close. And like, so like every part of that is engaging, and it left you more and more stuff to just discover as you watched it. So that was easily one of my favorite moments in this film.
It's extraordinary, right? I've seen another shot like that in a film called... this is going to take me a second to pull it up, but it was a film about a restaurant worker who basically gets tormented by a phone call, and there's a shot at the end of the film. The movie was called Compliance, and it has a similar shot like that. And it's just such a... It kind of like goes to show the power of, I guess, location, you know, in a way, because it's basically... It's really highlighting the disparity in location through this single take. And yeah, in this case, though, the thing that's amazing about it is the fact that it reveals itself slowly over time. And then, you know, like from the other side of it, just the sort of tactilely exciting part of this film, again, had to come down to Cynthia Erivo's character. She was just this visceral, powerful, strong force in this film that, you know, like she had this sort of quiet energy about her that every time she was on screen as Belle, I was kind of like, I want to see a whole film with that character. And then there was this sort of amazing moment where she's like creeping around the mansion and she climbs up onto a fence and she's kind of like stalking the security guards to see what's happening. I was like in the back of my head was like, Cynthia Erivo for Batwoman. Cynthia Erivo for Batwoman. Yeah. Give her all the superhero roles at this moment. It was just something about her screen presence that was just so enigmatic and compelling that I just couldn't take my eyes off her any moment she was on screen. And
very different from, say, Bad Times at the El Royale. Like, it was a completely different energy, which I'm always, again, impressed with.
So good.
Obviously, Viola Davis is great. Obviously, you know what I really appreciated about this film, and this is a minor thing, but that they didn't lean into the Michelle Rodriguez stereotype.
Yeah, Michelle Rodriguez. Yeah, like Michelle Rodriguez could play the Cynthia Erivo character 10 years ago. Kind of that's what she would do.
I mean, she could play it now. The woman is a vampire and does not age. But the fact of the matter is that she played the character who wasn't a good shot. She played, and it was funny. I could see a little bit of struggle. Like, Michelle Rodriguez just looks natural shooting a gun at this point because I've been inundated throughout my entire life to have her be the badass.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, oh, good. They didn't just lean on that. Like, they let Michelle Rodriguez do her part, make small choices. It was very nice.
So the thing that didn't work for me comes back to Viola Davis's character, and I think the central plotting of this film. So towards the back end of this movie, there are obviously reveals, and we're in spoiler town now, so we can say that. But you know, the biggest reveal of this film is that Harry is still alive.
What? And she's not a widow.
She's not a widow. Yeah, exactly. The title of fake news.
Yeah.
But I thought, again, the reveal of that was really powerful.
Yeah.
Like when we basically see the dog kind of barking at this door. And what's so cool about the scripting there is that we think, so for Veronica, the reveal there is that Amanda's child might be Harry's child, you know, because he can smell that, and like she can smell that she's been there.
Yeah.
But then Veronica leaves the room, not opening the door with that revelation, and then Amanda opens the door, and we see that Liam Neeson is actually there, like he's still alive.
Yep.
And so I thought that was like a really powerful moment. But unfortunately, the thing that I think where this film starts falling into sort of heavy-handed kind of like twisty plotting has to do with like there's one scene in particular, and that's the sort of flashback to how Veronica and Harry's son died,
right?
Which is a flashback to which we can like a police police brutality sort of thing where a young African American male is driving a nice car and is shot. Now the thing about this was that prior to that we'd seen a kind of quick flash of the funeral of their son. So that came before we figured out how the son had died. And I kind of felt that the funeral was all I needed to know. Like the suggestion that they had a son, that the son died, and that Harry had now tried to go on and make another family was kind of more intrinsically valuable to what I needed to know about Harry than anything that the police brutality story kind of gave me. And I think what started happening is there was some over-explanation towards the end. Again, it's not terrible. It's not terribly done.
Right.
But it's the points where I was kind of like, oh, I just loved when the dead son was just an image of a dead son, and we had to kind of fill in the blanks ourselves.
Right.
When they started explaining it, the whole thing, I was like, oh, I think this is doing more harm to the film than good at this point.
Are you talking about when they're basically like, oh, when Liam Neeson basically started to malign or even have negative feelings towards Viola Davis because their son was black in a weird way? Is that like that aspect of it, or the way that it's told? Are you saying?
I think seeing the whole thing play out lessens it. You know what I mean? Like just knowing to me, Viola Davis saying you wanted to start a new white family is enough.
Is enough.
Like I don't need to see what happened to the son.
I think from a storytelling perspective and from 100% trying to make the cleanest story possible, I agree with you. I also think that this is a film that, due to its other stuff, that does seem a little bit sort of out of a 2018 best of the worst of book. Like this does fit here. And it didn't distract me so much as sort of hammer home. In fact, that was the most effective of, I feel like, other than obviously the 7-minute scene, sort of the racial undertones of this entire situation.
But didn't you feel when that scene started happening like you knew where it was going to go?
Sure, but this is a weird, for the time and the place that we're in currently as a society, there is a value to consistently being reminded in and around in a lot of our media of the shit that happens. Now,
yeah,
again,
I get that. I totally understand
and
that.
I'm saying, and I agree with you from the fact of, if I wanted the cleanest story possible or the tightest story possible, let's say, I would not have included that scene. But I think, the director and the producers and everybody definitely had a something they wanted to say and they wanted to show. And I think that's why it's there, and I don't malign it for it, but I do see your point of it does seem excessive only from a story itself standpoint.
Yeah, it's not to do. Yeah, it's got nothing to malign where we are as a society, right, and how much this actually happens in real life. It's not that I didn't believe that scene happened. I just think that the film goes into sort of over-explaining mode, and then there's a sort of consequential story element that I think the film had an opportunity to do but doesn't do, which is that when Viola Davis, I guess, realizes that Harry is still alive, there's an opportunity for the rest of the crew to find this out, and they don't, because it would have been interesting to have them have to turn on Viola Davis's character, because essentially her husband got all of their husbands killed on purpose, and now she's trying to get them to pull this new heist. I think it would have been an interesting opportunity to kind of like increase the tension in the dynamics of the group that way. It's not a bad, not a bad thing that they didn't include it, but I was like, it's kind of a big reveal to kind of know that Harry purposely got all of their husbands killed. Yeah. And it's something that they don't know.
Also, just throwing this out there, Viola Davis could have just gone to the people she owes money for and be like, I found out my husband's alive and he's a scumbag. He's hiding at this house. And then end of movie.
I think the thing is that she doesn't know that he's alive until the very last scene.
No, she sees him. She walks out of the house. That's the end of Act 2 when that twist happens, when the dog is
no, but that's the thing. She sits at the door and the dog doesn't open the door. That's what
opens.
I'm saying.
The door opens.
The door opens after she leaves. That
she knows 100% that he is alive. That the flask the flask is on the table. Yeah, the dog is smelling the door. She cracks it open, gasps, and then leaves the place.
Write us in if you've seen the movie, onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. I'll put money on this right now. You're 180 degrees wrong about that.
Nope.
She does not open the door, and that's the tension in that scene, which is what I described earlier. She just presumes that Harry is the father of this child and has been here before, like he's smelling a coat. Then she leaves. Amanda comes out and opens the door, and the audience learns that Harry is in that room.
The door is cracked. The door is cracked, and she sees, and then she pushes the door open to reveal to the audience.
Money on this right now. If you have seen Widows, please write us in and tell us your definition on that scene.
Or if you're about to go see it, let's say that too. Pay special attention.
If you're about to go see it, why would you be listening to us at this point? We've just spoiled the movie.
Well, some people like pain.
I will put money on that. What do you want to put down on it?
I will put $1 on it.
I'll put a whole $1 down on that. That is the whole thing is that she doesn't open the door. But let's entertain and see where that goes.
Yes. Also another plot hole, just because we're on this the thing of sort of weird moments in it. Why does, maybe you can answer this for me? Why does the woman who is supposedly supposed to be the fourth widow in this thing and then isn't, the woman who Harry's having an affair with, why does she finally go to Viola Davis's character after not going at first?
I think the implication there is Harry kind of tells her to go, like Harry's kind of pulling the strings there.
That's what I thought, but then I was like, there's literally no call in the movie about that.
So there's an interesting thing, so what was Harry's plan? Harry's plan, I believe, and I think that, like, when I watched the movie, I was a little confused about this, but Harry's plan is that he wants to break away and start a new life. So he gets a job for Colin Farrell's Mulligan character to rob his opponent, Jamal's sort of fund for his election campaign, which is $2 million. He steals that money, kills his entire crew, then leaves the money with Colin Farrell in the hope that Veronica sells his plans for how to break into that to Jamal, so that Jamal will then, I don't think Harry ever intended for Veronica to kind of like take on the heist herself. He was just supposed to sell the book.
Sure.
And then is Harry then gonna take the money after that? Like, I'm not sure what was the major incentive for him to kill off his, everyone he knows and to like fake his own death. You know what I mean? Like, it seems a little confusing.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of stuff sort of in the end of the second, beginning of the third act that's a little bit confusing to get us sort of.
Yeah. So it's a little bit it's a little bit confusing about that, and I think that sort of like overall confusion doesn't make the film feel as kind of like concisely, cleanly put together.
Sure.
But I think for me, and then there's this sort of other thing which I can kind of explain away, which is like Cynthia Erivo's character Belle is clearly the fastest runner, the strongest person, but she's outside driving when they clearly have already established that this could be a very difficult thing that requires someone fast and strong to be inside the heist. Maybe it's because nobody else could drive, I guess.
Yeah, that was the interesting part. No one knew how to drive well.
Yeah, but I was like, okay, I could kind of buy that, I guess, I suppose. Maybe if you kind of like lit it, like if it kind of works. But like I was like, just from a like a logistical point of view, you've got this amazing, athletic, smart, capable person. They should be on the front line of this heist,
right?
As opposed to on the back end of it. I don't know.
You know what? Hold on. I just had a revelation, and I might just owe you $1 right now already, but we can still have people ask it. There was a moment in this film. And it was this moment. So maybe I just built something in my mind where at the moment when the dog's barking and you see the flask, there was an older couple sitting next to me and Jamie talking, just fucking talking. And I leaned forward and just stared at them for a solid 10, 15 seconds till the guy noticed. And I put my finger up like, shh, and then he was quiet. And I looked back and Viola Davis like went, woo, and then ran out of the place. So I might have built in the fact that she opened the door.
Right. I'm 100% certain, though I have been proven wrong in the past, that she doesn't open the door, and it's only after she leaves that the door is open and we see who's behind the door.
I could have sworn then that I still have this memory, and I guess that whole thing is a in and out of a movie sort of thing. But like I still have the memory of the door not being pushed open, but the camera just coming around. I don't know. We'll see. You're probably correct. But let us know. onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com.
So again, it kind of sum total like the interesting thing here is the heist is kind of a very quick heist, and it's very. For all their plotting and planning,
it's simple.
The plan is basically just to run into the house and steal the money and run out.
They case the joint too. They case it on the outside. They case it on the inside.
But what I like about that is it seems very practical for like my level of heist. Like my level of capability. It's like, oh, okay, so here's the house. We're just gonna figure out how to get in and how to get out. The one thing we haven't really talked about much, and he's such an amazing presence in this movie, is Daniel Kaluuya's character of
just a monster.
Oh my god, he's so good in this. Jatim.
Yep.
Jatim. I might be French pronouncing that. Actually, Jatim. But he is so menacing and so incredibly, again, it's like the inverse of Cynthia Erivo. I think like put a movie with Daniel Kaluuya doing that and Cynthia Erivo doing the opposite, and I'm like, that's a team up I want to see, or a head to head I want to see.
Right. Yeah.
He's so good in that. And like speaking of little details, I love that the little details of that was that you would see him waiting outside, like watching something happen, and he'd be listening to a podcast about prison reform or something like that, or solitary confinement. And then in another case, he's listening to a podcast or listening to something about how to speak Spanish.
Right.
And every time like he's in a room, he's reading a book or something like that, and he sits down as they're about to kill Bash and watches the TV kind of like with his head cocked to one side, it's just such little details that like, again, make me feel like there's an entire film for this character.
Building that world.
That I would totally happily watch. The other, like, I get so excited about every single character in this movie. Like Amanda's character, the architect that she's like having a relationship with, like a paid relationship with. I feel like, oddly, I don't think I want to see him. What's that?
You mean Alice?
Lucas Haas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alice. Sorry. Yeah. Alice is having a relationship with, kind of a paid transactional relationship. I don't think I want to see a film with him, but I was like curious, like, oh, he seems to know a lot about architecture. He's got this trip planned to Shanghai. Everyone's got all this stuff going on. I even love the bowling alley
guy who
wheelchair bit. Yeah, and that actor is one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite parts of There Will Be Blood. He played the brother in the brother, quotation marks, in There Will Be Blood, Kevin O'Connor. And I just loved seeing him. And I was like, the stabbing scene of him was so difficult to watch. I loved all this. The score by Hans Zimmer, I think maybe is the most familiar part of this film, where I was like, oh, they're really Batmaning this up. And then I checked after the film. I was like, oh, it is Hans Zimmer who did this. So, whatever. But again, this is a fantastic film, one that I highly recommend. I'm going to get into my final thoughts here. One that, just worked for me on almost every level, and is the kind of film, the kind of big, I guess, because this is sort of meant to be a pleasurable kind of heist experience. And I think this is the kind of pleasurable heist experience that I really like, which is that it's rich, it's full, nothing is throwaway in this movie. And so I just loved every minute of it, despite having a few things that I think didn't quite work as well as I think they should have. But I'm so excited about this movie. If you haven't seen this at this point, please go out and see it. Go out and see it twice.
Wow. I think, you know what? At first I was like, well, I don't know if I'd see it twice. Maybe I would, only because the parts that I felt confused about, with few and far between, but I was like, this movie feels smart enough to me where if I watched it a second time, all of the answers are there, and I just probably didn't catch them the first time round. So I could totally second that notion. I think it's great. I think, this is one of those movies I want more people to actually go see in the theater, even if you just go once, because I'd like, a little bit of let the number cruncher people know that people will actually go see films with this sort of emotional weight and resonance that's not all about just like a gigantic heist or like a world-ending experience or like whatever the hell. Yeah, and again, I had minor gripes, nothing remotely even worth denoting, except if we were going to go into an in-depth discussion, as we just did. In fact, you know what? My biggest problem, I'll tell you right now, my biggest problem with this movie was Liam Neeson's excessive tongue kissing in the first minute.
I love that. You know what?
Gross.
I just love that that they went for it right in the first scene. I was like, because you were seeing a couple, and I was like, oh yeah, they were really going for the tongue. I mean, I don't want to see my parents making out, but at the same time, I was like, I like that the movie was going.
I would have no problem with people of any age doing any activity in this film. It's just it was like it was watching a bad kisser kiss, and maybe that was an acting choice, and I was just like, oh.
I love that the couple felt genuinely in love for the first half of it.
Yeah,
like they were like a really
helped the twist.
Yeah, really excitable couple.
Yeah, agreed.
So I love that, yeah.
Well, this has been the only podcast about the film Widows. Shahir, when you are not staring lovingly at Liam Neeson's sweet, sweet tongue action, where can folks find you?
I'll probably be hiding in the corner of his shower, to be honest with you. But you can catch me at www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD.com. Matt, when you are not shushing the people in the theater next to you to the point it's missing potential plot points, and I really want to get this. I want to know who's right or wrong on this one. Where can people find you?
You can find me silently judging and staring at you at MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor, the number 4 Pierisi on Instagram, or Emperor MSK on Twitter. And of course, you can find all of the video essays I narrate and showrun over at Extra Credits YouTube channel. Check that out. And we'll be back next week with another movie.
I know there's another movie right now that you will be dying to see, but I'm not sure I can make it to the movies to see.
Which one? Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah, Into the Spider-Verse.
It has 100, not that Rotten Tomatoes means anything, but I always get excited when movies I like or supposedly like have hundreds on Rotten Tomatoes. Also, there hasn't been a negative review yet that I've read of it. They say it's one of the greatest stories of like becoming a hero, being taught to be a hero by someone who's forgotten how to be one. And that sentence really threw me over the top. We 100% have to do Into the Spider-Verse.
I know we have to do it. I may not be able to get out of the house because of my spotty state and contagious state right now.
Well, we got a while. It comes out on the 13th, I think. So
okay.
We got time. The reviews have been rolling out today. The embargo, because they were so good, got dropped. So like 2 weeks ahead of time or whatever, they're just letting them fly.
So this is the tricky thing, is that I think December 12th is the movie that I'm most excited about this year comes out on Netflix, which is Alfonso Cuarón's Roma.
Well, maybe we could do a double header. At least
I don't think either of us want to dilute each other's properties, right?
No. So maybe if we could see one early, we could try that. Let's use our sweet Z-list celebrity internet ties.
We're absolutely going to do both of them. If you have an opinion about whether the door is open, please email us and have a vested interest. Maybe you can up the ante on this. Please email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod.
And if you were that couple that I was shushing, you were definitely watching it, so you could email us and let us know.
Yeah. Until next time, I guess. Let's hope we're in the same room and I don't get you sick with my diseases.
Yeah, get
Maybe
better.
You and I could tongue kiss.
I get better.
And that will be how we'll know if I'm cured or not, is if we tongue kiss and at the end of it you're not sick.
I mean, I don't want to do that, but if it ever happened, it would not be like Liam Neeson.
You would do it in the name of science? I'm imagining it right now. So
you do not have a particular set of skills. Anyway, gotta go.
Bye.
Bye.